Happy Monday, everybody, and thanks for checking in our latest TDR Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Nice, healthy day on the markets right now for the cannabis space, as it seems that news late last week involving Donald Trump has put some fire under some of these stocks. So we're going to jump into that and talk about a few things, including Matt Gaetz and his non-approval for Amendment 3. What does that mean? As well, we'll look at a few other things, including last week's earnings, look at a few other companies, including Cresco Labs, their CEO, Charlie Bachtell, will come in and he'll join us to talk about their balance sheet and profitability. That is important, and the main reason why you should listen to his messaging here on the podcast here today. So let's welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varell. Good to see you. Happy Monday.
Yeah, good. Another Monday in the cannabis space.
So, what's that mean? What's that mean for you? Another Monday in the cannabis space.
Yeah, we had some good headlines this morning to start with Ascend, and then we got a little bit of shaky headlines with Matt Gaetz and Amendment 3 in the middle of the morning, and we got a strong close. So I'll take it.
Whichever way you look at it, things are starting to wake up in the space after a quiet July. But here we are in August. It's already almost the middle of August. Before you know it, we'll be into the fall. But this is the TDR Trade to Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with Anthony Varell. Let's kick off segment number 1, Into the Wire. Last Monday, we kicked things off with Ascend Wellness, and a week later, we'll do the same as the company announced today a strategic manufacturing and distribution partnership with Curio Wellness. It's a company that was founded back in 2014 in Baltimore and is a leading wellness brand in cannabis, which was recognized by BDS Analytics. So, Anthony, maybe tell us a little bit more about this company and I guess how this plans to expand, the footprint of Ascend Wellness.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a mutually beneficial relationship for both. Ascend Wellness is going to bring Curio's products into Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. And then Curio is going to bring Ascend's Ozone brand into Maryland and Missouri. They'll be manufacturing and distributing each other's brands in those key markets. Curio's got a couple of legacy brands such as Caviar and Dixie. And I mean, it looks like it's good all the way around. I mean, they're growing by addition. We're going to have John on Wednesday to dive into this and give it a much deeper understanding, how it really benefits Ascend, why they decided to do this, and how the addition of the brands to their portfolio in these key markets, being Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, is going to be a big driver for growth of them. So we'll definitely have more on Wednesday from straight from John.
Seems like a good little partnership, though. No incremental additional costs for Ascend to put this together, but like you said, it will expand. Do they currently have any partnerships with any other MSOs, Curio?
I have no idea.
No?
I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of any.
All right, so they were basically formed in 2014. So a good little move. And like I said, we'll have more with John Hartman on Wednesday.
Caviar and Dixie have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I would almost even say that they're legacy brands within the space.
Okay.
Robert's right. Caviars are Cavi cones. Cavi cones are pretty good pre-rolls as far as everything goes. Yeah.
All right. We'll have that updated with more information regarding that as we bring in CEO John Hartman on the podcast on Wednesday. Speaking of CEOs, let's call topic number 2. Let's bring in the CEO of Cresco Labs, Charlie Bachtell. Good to see you. Happy Monday. How are things?
What's happening, guys? Things are going well. How are you?
How's it going?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like things are going well. We've some big takeaways, with the latest earnings season, and there's a few company highlights that I think pointed out and stood out to us, including your story where revenue hit $184 million with gross profit up of $95 million. Adjusted gross margin jumped to 52%. SG&A was slashed also by 14%. And there's a $51 million net loss, but thanks to a one-time $61 million tax hit, adjusted EBITDA up 33% to $54 million. You pulled in $17 million in cash flow and kept top spot in Illinois. So all in all, it seems like it's just another quarter where you continue to rinse and repeat, and it further defines, I guess, what you're building here. But how would you best describe your latest earnings?
I think you did a great job of describing them. But we also held on in Pennsylvania and Mass too to number 1. Look, I think another example, another great quarter. Team doing what the team now knows that we just do, and I think that's how we felt about Q2. And it was funny as we were putting together the script for it. I told the team after the first read through of it, it was like, and I said, "Team, I mean this as a big compliment." I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's getting boring with just the repeated, it's an execution story, did great, held margin. well done in its sameness. Now putting together 3-4 quarters in a row of just really, really, really good execution. So
what needs to be done in this space, though, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's like if you find what you're doing and doing it the right way, the sameness is actually a good thing, because when I look at top line revenue, it's increasing for a number of companies in the space. However, profitability still remains a challenge for many. So what do you think, if you had to pinpoint one or two things as to what you're doing versus, say, some of your competition?
I think it is prioritizing the bottom line, right? If you look at what we did about a year ago, we made some tough decisions. We reduced some of our exposure to some states that we like, and we think these states are important for brand recognition and for the consumer base, but they're tough from an economic structured standpoint, and you have to be pretty objective when you're doing these evaluations.
Yeah.
Because while you might want to be there, and while you might want to give it another quarter or another half year to see if it turns around, you can't let underperforming economic markets drag down the rest of the boat. There's just too much. There's too much other focus and responsibility that comes to it. So I think it's a real discipline that's been just, as we said last time, I think I was on the podcast. It's part of our DNA now.
Yeah.
And how we approach these situations. So super disciplined. And then it really is, you have to constantly be getting smarter. You have to learn from your experiences, and you have to incorporate that into your go forward. And I think that's really where the side benefit of the year of the core last year was, by getting rid of some of these other not as productive efforts that we were engaging in, that the ripple effects of that is it drags down the bandwidth of the rest of the team that now has to focus on all of these things, even though those don't really move the needle on the company in the right direction. By getting rid of those and allowing the team to focus on what really moves the needle for us, you're seeing the results.
How are you maintaining these number one market shares in the markets such as Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts? Is it disciplined retail? Is it brand differentiation, quality products? Are you winning at wholesale? Like, what's attributing to that and maintaining that pole position? Because you've had it for a couple of quarters now in those markets, if I'm not mistaken.
We talk about it all the time. Like, it's more difficult to hold share than it is to get it. Right. When you're sitting on that top spot, and when new brands or new stores are coming into a market and they're looking at you in your leadership position, and part of a very rational and investable thesis is open up the store right next to the top store and bask in the halo. That's legit. So you have to be able to weather that. And at the risk of oversimplifying it, it is a really deep level of engagement in the end-to-end, which is producing our results for the last year. They all components of the business, from the branded product side to the owned retail, and then the commercial wholesale in between, they function together. You can't be strong in one area and hope that you'll have success. They have to work together. It's a constant feedback loop, and they're helping. Those sides of the business are always helping out the other sides of the business to produce the best outcome for the overall company. So it's that team is, those teams, I should say, the level of integration and their commitment to end-to-end thought process on what's in the best interest of the company is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of just growth, I mean, you guys have been growing for a couple of quarters in Florida. I mean, that's been a huge turnaround story as far as the OMMU numbers and seeing them progress on a weekly and monthly basis. I mean, do you have plans to grow the store count in Florida and start to, I guess, encroach on some of your competitors' territory that are saturated in the state currently?
So it depends. Like November's outcome impacts that, and I think what we get asked this question a lot. Like, okay, so with Florida, your results down there and adult use, I'm assuming you're going to be opening up a lot more stores, and it's important for everybody to remember the uniqueness of Florida, which is you're on an island down there. You can't buy third-party product to put on your retail shelves, and you can't sell your product into somebody else's stores if you don't have the shelves to sell it across yourself. So making sure that you're in that equilibrium between what you can produce and what you need in order to sell it, or how you can sell it, is unique to Florida. So depending on what happens in November will influence whether or not we technically open more stores in the near term, because arguably our stores are going to become, multiples more productive. So for us, it's making sure that we've got enough product to continue to feed the 32 or 33 stores that we have down there, if there's all of a sudden a 3x, 4x in demand through the same stores. So there's definitely going to be additional investment. The way that we're approaching Florida is a bit phased. We've got a phase 1 plan to increase capacity, because, as you said, we know that we can grow in Florida even if it stays medical, and so we need to be able to feed that growth. So phase 1 of the approach is increasing the capacity in a meaningful but managed amount that will be good for us in medical, or good for us in phase 1 of adult use. And then if adult use passes in November, we'll launch phase 2 immediately thereafter, which is a much more significant increase in production, but would be more than we need if it was only medical. So that's why we staged the approach.
And then speaking of Florida, I mean, were you surprised today to see Matt Gates's comments as it relates to 3, or was that something that I guess you guys were expecting for him to have that stance on?
No, I don't know that we were expecting him to have that stance on it, but I don't read too much into it. I think he's got a primary coming up, and there's political strategy at play. And I thought it was interesting in the description of it that he has not changed his perspective on the subject matter. It's just that he thinks this is not technically the right way to do it. I don't read too much into that.
What do you think that means? Not that the right way to do it. If you were to, I don't want to say speculate, but it seems like he's on both sides of the fence when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, I think what he said, if I'm not mistaken, is that he doesn't believe it should be a constitutional amendment, that it should be legislative. And so again, he's not changing his position on cannabis supporting cannabis and cannabis reform. He just doesn't think this is the right structure of reform. I don't have any inside info on this, but I could see that being part of a political strategic decision as he's going to be facing a primary here and needs support.
I think you nailed it with that. I mean, I spoke to a couple of people after the comments, and I mean, 3 kind of was just collateral damage with his stance on 4, because he came out adamantly against 4 and was not a fan of the structure of what they wanted to do, which was a constitutional amendment. So if you're going to say it about 4, you kind of have to say it about 3. But yes, I agree with you. I don't think that changed his stance on cannabis whatsoever. It just happens to be a formality, and we got dragged into it, unfortunately.
Getting some nice comments here regarding your Florida operations, but the Dank Informer writes, great sunny side location in Destin, Florida, quite visible from Harbor Boulevard when driving down towards the boardwalk. Also some increasing numbers. I think there was somebody else that actually reached out to us. Joe Capiolo writes, hey crew, can you ask Charlie about the outlook for New York with shops being closed down and what the future holds? Any feedback regarding New York?
New York, it's a tough rollout of that program. And so for us, as we look at, again, that discipline that we've been talking about, and that discipline carries through to allocation of capital. As we look at allocating capital, it's just hard to put New York at the top of the list for like where that next dollar goes, when we've got Ohio, launching a fairly successful rollout of the adult use program, and then Pennsylvania, in Florida, in the sort of on the edges here, and I think it's fair to everybody to remember too. It's not just like us making the decision to kind of lean in and really engage in New York, as New York also has a structural issue where they want you to write a giant check.
I know.
In order to do that too.
A lot of money.
You got to include that cost, that capital allocation in your decision, and that's why you see New York. I think in the long term, New York is, it's going to be a giant market, and of course we'll want to be there. But in the short run here, we've got other opportunities to allocate capital that would have a better, quicker return.
Mm-hmm.
How are things progressing in Ohio? Any key learnings or any data that you're seeing coming out in the early innings that you could share?
I think, look, it was for what it is, and I said this I think in the Q&A on the call, it's important for everybody to understand, like, I don't describe it as adult use has launched in Ohio. It really is. It's still the medical program. It's the medical structure. It's the medical rules. And they've just allowed non-patients to enter the stores.
Right.
That's what it is. It's like a modification of the medical program. The AU rules haven't been finalized. We expect it this fall. We all had pretty, I say this, it was nicely done. I think it was well executed, but we had real serious conversations with the head of the program there in advance of the rollout, where we were reminded that this is still the medical program. The medical rules are still in place. And if you can't do it under the medical program, don't even try to do it until the adult use laws are finalized. So if I take it, just fast forward, like, we all found out, I want to say on a Thursday or Friday, that we were going to be able to open on Tuesday. That's different than
not much ramp up time.
Right. That's different than when a state says Jan 1 AU launches. You've got 3 months where people, right, are building the energy. They're camping out the night before. Lines are around the block. This was from a Thursday to a Tuesday. And again, like, I think in the long run, this might make for a better sort of managed rollout, because you're not going to have the bad consumer experience of waiting 6 hours in line and then being told that there's no inventory left. Like a lot of those negatives, the giant rollout also aren't here, but it's been a productive rollout. The teams, look, I can only speak for Cresco, but I think anybody who has managed the 1 foot in, 1 foot out, we're going to fight this law, but now we're going to expedite it and we're going to launch early, but it's still medical, but you can let non-patients in. Anybody who's managed this, they deserve a lot of credit. It's not your typical rollout.
Well, I will say, after driving around the state last week, for no ramp up time, I could not believe the turnout in some of the locations. But from what I heard and saw, some of the feedback, there's a lot of media coverage at your location in Cincinnati, if I'm correct. Was there not?
Yes.
Yeah. What were some of the questions? Were they very educated? Did you get any feedback with some of the questions that they were asking while they were there?
Oh, I think it's a perfect example of this is awareness and education. That's what phase we're in right now. And fortunately, that's one thing you're allowed to do in the current, even constrained medical structure, is awareness and education is not advertising or promotion. So you can talk about it. You can scream it from the rooftops of what it is, how it works, when you're open, all of that. But I would also tell you, like, we had strong turnout at our stores, but having been there, I was fortunate enough to be there for few hours during the day, and I'd say the majority of consumers who came up asked, is it true that adult use sales are starting at a rate? So that's not your typical like, I've been waiting for this, I heard about it and I'm ready. It's is it available? And it was come on.
So consumers, so both consumers and producers weren't really prepared, let's say, for this. It was kind of, hey guys, we're going live on Tuesday. Let's kind of make the best of it.
Yeah. And look, I think everybody did a good job, and you'll continue to see it build as that awareness gets out there, and as people know more about it. I expect you'll see consumer engagement continue to go up.
And how are things going in PA? I mean, are you confident that we probably get something maybe second half of next year in terms of adult use in PA?
I'd put more likely than not on it.
Okay.
I think there's been good work done over the recess. Again, selfishly for the cannabis issue, I was concerned if Governor Shapiro got tapped on the shoulder to be a VP, what that might mean, because nobody knows. I don't know if all of a sudden then they don't put a bill in front of him. I don't know if he would have been willing to sign it or wanted to sign it more. It was just like a variable that I'm glad we didn't have to deal with. But all indications there's a bipartisan bill. It's been worked on over the recess. It's had some changes made that I think are in line with more, making it more likely that it'll get put in front of the governor. And we know that we've got a supportive governor there who's ready to sign it.
Yeah. That's great. Let's talk about the big behemoth, good old Washington. And I know last time you were on, you'd line the headline that rescheduling will indeed happen before the actual election. We're seeing more and more coverage from the Dems pertaining to cannabis, and then Lo and behold, Donald Trump makes an announcement when he was asked a question during a press conference last Thursday, which has resulted in some healthy trading days since that actual announcement. And it seems like the Republicans are trying to get in on this conversation as well. So few people we've had on that worked in politics prior said, the strategy if I were the Dems, I'd bring this out and make this announcement when it comes to rescheduling around the beginning of like October, right before the election, 3-4 weeks out. Do you think it happens still within that timeline? Do you think with Trump now getting involved, we could see it happen maybe sooner?
I don't know if on the timing side of it, I still believe that this does get across the finish line before the election. I don't know if it's October or sooner because of Trump's recent announcement. Yeah, I don't know. What I do know is that from the very beginning, the most senior leaders in these administrative bodies that are around this issue have been engaged in it. And that's why, as we talked last time, like the DOJ wasn't surprised that they were going to get tens of thousands of comments on this. Everybody has known what they're dealing with since the time when the sitting president asked for the review of the scheduling of cannabis. Like, that's eyes wide open all along. And, you know, as I understand it, you have the most senior leaders in these agencies that have, again, already made the recommendation, working on what is the strategy that puts this issue in the best position possible to be successful. What that means, I don't know. You know, I couldn't tell you if that means have a hearing or if that means not have a hearing. That's what they're working through right now, if they have the obligation or not. But I do know it's happening at the highest levels of the agency, and it is from the perspective of how does it be as defensible and as durable as it can be, which is, again, all we can kind of ask for being in the space.
Durability, I think, is one of the main aspects that's not talked about most. It's got to be able to withstand scrutiny, and we can't expedite it to in light of that.
Right. And then as far as like the statement that was made last week, without reading too much into it, but just on the words that were said, I think it helps support sort of our feeling on how this was shaping up. And again, a lot of this has to do more with feel than tangible sort of documentable efforts. But if you look at where cannabis is sitting right now, and if you look at where the November election is sort of sitting right now, you've got a ticket on the left where both members are in favor of legalization. It's the first time that's ever happened. Like, that's
pretty nice.
Let's not forget. And even as progressive as Biden became on the issue, he was never on the record as for legalization, as we now have with the current left ticket. And then if you look on the right, you've got one member of that ticket whose state we've just been talking about, that recently legalized adult use and is launching the program here. And then you've got the statements from the other member where he's acknowledging that as more and more states legalize this, it is impacting the way that he's thinking about this. And then we also have sort of the comments that he's made over the last couple of months as it relates to this quasi-sister issue of abortion that tends to be on tickets together, on ballots together, like we saw in Ohio and like we're going to see in Florida. And the position there has been that that's a states' rights issue. That's where they're coming out on it. I think JD Vance, I think it might have been a question that you had asked him in an interview that you did with him on sort of where he's at safe, and he said, "Look, I think it's a states' rights issue." So when you're states' rights, the great thing about states' rights is then that means it can't be federally illegal, right? If you believe that it needs to be a decision that the states are allowed to make, whether they're for it or against it, then you can't have that sort of that conflict at the federal level. So, and again, not to say that they've made policy statements on what they're going to do, and maybe it's forthcoming here in the near term. But if you just objectively from 10,000 feet look at the position that cannabis is in right now between the two potential administrations we have in 2025, cannabis is in a pretty good spot for there to be some rational sort of legislative approaches that'll impact the industry going forward in a very material, meaningful way.
So you spend more money when it comes to lobbying in Washington versus any other company in the space. Does it really feel different based on some of the feedback and dialogue you're having with representatives from Washington from the past?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I would say the credit goes to the subject matter itself. Like, anybody who's been fighting, scratching and clawing at this for a while is like, yeah, it's a no brainer. Like, of course, but it's the cannabis has been the cannabis story now has been shared to the point where you're seeing the incorporation of it, the changing perspective on it. That's finally starting to get through that. I've said it many times before, like at a medical level, cannabis polls at north of 90%. There's nothing else that I'm aware of that polls at 90+%. So it's finally starting to make itself into the conversation in a meaningful way in DC, which is what we've needed. Yeah.
Well, fingers crossed. I'm not going to bore you with safe banking, though. I hope it does happen during lame duck session. But listen, incremental steps. Let's get rescheduling announced first, and then once that's announced, I'll ask you the safe banking question, because it's almost like in sales. What have you done for me lately, right?
Sure. I get it.
Exactly.
Listen, tell the team that we say hi, and always great catching up with you. Great job. I think the key thing here that I take away from you leading this team right now is the word discipline, which is badly needed in this space. And if you can provide discipline and repeat it over and over and over, that sameness is a good thing gradually over time. So kudos to you and the team. And it's a really good story that you're building within the space. And I think our audience understands that too. So appreciate the time.
I appreciate the time too. Good to see you guys.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. Thank you,
soon.
Charlie. Great CEO. So disciplined, right? Yeah, it really is. Interesting take, obviously, with Matt Gaetz, but it is what it is. But
he is right. He is right, though. When you look at the semantics and you look what Matt actually said, it doesn't change his stance on cannabis. He didn't say that he was against Amendment 3. He said he was against the structure of it. And Matt might be playing smarter politics than DeSantis, as he is going into a primary. And people aren't stupid. If you're going to say structurally you don't align with Amendment 4, you can't structurally align with Amendment 3. They're being put to vote in the exact same way as a constitutional amendment.
Yeah, and JD Vance, when it came to safe banking, different conversation or topic, but it was the way it was structured, safe, the way it was presented to him, and he felt it led to I'd
like to believe him on. I'd like to believe him on that. We'll see.
It wasn't a flat.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. All right, it's MSOS Mondays. Let's cue up the music and bring in Mr. Dan Ahrens. $4:30 on a Monday afternoon, MSOS Mondays. Dan Ahrens, good to see you, my friend. How has your week been?
It's been all right. Not a bad start to the day. MSOS down 1 penny. MSOX down 1 penny.
So let's begin with that. What do you have to do to change that, Dan?
It's not my fault. Hey, I will say that within that down 1 penny, I've talked about it before. That's not necessarily the net asset value of the fund. There's bid ask prices, everything else. But today, it seems there is a much smaller competitor fund out there doing a quarterly rebalancing. And we've talked about it before. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They do it very badly. So when you see a wide chasm between the performance of various multi-state operators, that might be, you might need to look a little further as to why that is.
And I just noticed actually that Maramed was up 30% on the day, 31.5% to be precise, with 1.4 million shares traded. I wasn't aware that rebalancing was going on again. That hasn't been fun the last couple of quarters.
Well, we got eyeballs on it when we saw a particular stock down more than 20. And then you look at the unusual volume. And then for those that they can see that those trades were going through National Bank of Canada, which is a swap counterparty that we don't do business with, but some others do.
Interesting.
There you
Gotcha.
go.
Wow.
Why it's very
All right,
important
I'm
to be able to
done. I
read
can
the
leave
tape.
now, right? No, I'm kidding.
That's why it's very important to be able to read the tape in the level 2s. It all matters.
That's interesting. In case no one got a chance to see, but we did release a interview with MaryMed this morning at 11 a.m. with their CEO, John Levine, and newly appointed CFO, Mario Pino, who I interviewed late last week. So if you gotten a chance, make sure to log on to our YouTube channel and check out that latest video, as their top line revenue remains strong along with wholesale. But an interesting question I did bring up with Charlie, and it was just, I think the big thing or big takeaway we get with him, and this is actually good for the industry, is just the overall discipline that's being taken place. And, you know, it's great to obviously see a lot of these companies, you know, generating more and more revenue, but it comes down to obviously balance sheets and profitability, which they're continuing to demonstrate quarter after quarter recently. So if you had to look back, now we're 8 days into our latest earnings season, maybe a little bit longer. What stands out to you most with these latest earnings, Dan?
Lots of things. We always get excited about GTI coming out the gate first before a lot of other people do. And they do a great job. I mean, they always are strong. If you want to get technical about it, they might be, for those that want to say something negative, might say they're sandbagging their guidance a little bit. I'd like to say they're being conservative with their guidance. And that's just fine with me when you are growing, when you are outperforming, and you're not playing games with everything. So hey,
why do you think they're doing that?
Because they are continuing to grow and beat. Why do they have to promise the moon?
Right.
That'd be something like Tilray would do. Tilray shits the bed on earnings, and then they come out with a huge guidance. I'm not talking about this particular quarter, but I'm talking about quite a bit of history. No, I appreciate what
set you free. Dan Ahrens coming in hot here on a Monday. But yeah,
sorry. There's a big difference between game playing and over promising guidance and taking a slightly pragmatic conservative approach. And that's all I would say about GTI. I think there's a good chance they're going to come out, as long as they're continuing to show growth. They're growing every quarter. So that allows them to beat and not have to play games at all. Of course, Truly was super strong with their earnings. A lot of others were a little bit of a mixed bag, but we talked about this before. It's not until Q3 are we going to be including Ohio, which would be huge. But I appreciate the heck out of Charlie. He is one of the most, I'll use the word again, pragmatic, head down, very different than Ben's head down and execute, because Charlie is working hard in Washington and doing a lot of things for the space. He just does it a little bit behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So now hats off to Charlie and team. They did a good job.
Yeah, he's got the it factor. A true gentleman from top to bottom. Like, he's just disciplined, has time for everybody, and doesn't overpromise and underdeliver, from what I'm seeing from getting a chance to know him over the past 6 months or so. But the proof is in the numbers right now. But I think what you're seeing is, we've talked about this for years, Anthony. It's just the difference between the Canadian and American side. It's just, you look at these companies just trying to be disciplined and not try to oversell, at least the leaders in the industry. And that's what we got to pay attention to and kind of be re-educated on, knowing that a lot of investors got into this space on crazy valuations, right?
Yeah, but I mean, anecdotally, you could also say that it might have been to the advantage of the MSOs, unbeknownst, that they were entering limited license markets where they couldn't go grow 3 million square foot greenhouses to make them look like they were going to grow into these massive billion-dollar companies.
Yeah,
you could also say that the MSOs are much more have a much bigger advantage when the demand is actually there to buy the cannabis that they're growing. At the scale that they're currently at. The Canadian space was a lot of hype. I was right in the middle of it when it took place. The MSOs got lucky. They got to see that kind of, I don't want to say implode, but crash and burn. To be
careful there. The MSOs aren't going to say they're lucky because they don't get institutional capital. They can't list on the exchanges, all that stuff. But all that stuff was a lot of the Canadians' downfall. That's what.
I mean, I remember when we were talking about every single LP. Weren't talking about how much money they were making. It was how many square feet they had that they could grow cannabis. No one was asking where the hell are they going to sell it. It's Canada went legal. Let's spin up 4 million square feet of grow, which we don't even know how to grow in 100,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And then maybe the US is going to go legal 3 years down the road. I'm talking about 2015. And we'll be able to just sell it to everybody. Unfortunately, that never materialized. The MSOs didn't have to deal with that.
Well,
I've used the wording often that the MSOs were forced to be frugal growth. To be financially sound and conservative in the way they were growing and the way they were spending money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, and you had some that just grew that just planted flags in markets. And I mean, now you're seeing some right size their footprints. I'd say that's probably that's probably just the correlation between the two. Some might have outgrown their footprints for the sake of whatever, raising capital to create hype. It is what it is at this point. But I mean, the MSOs are much more disciplined and grew up in a much more disciplined environment than the Canadian LPs.
Just to be sure here, we're not talking about MedMen. We're talking about the tier 1 survivors.
No, we're talking
they learned on a lot of things on not what to do. But here we are today, August 2024. And what we're starting to see, I think, happen quarter after quarter, Dan, is I just think the pure size, the numbers that are being produced by the Trulieve, GTI, you look at profitability with Cresco and a few others, and you're starting to see some companies separate themselves from the bulk of the industry.
Definitely.
Has that grabbed your attention? And if so, like, how do you think this competitive landscape starts to materialize and develop over the next year or so?
Well, again, you've seen a separation. The tier 1s are tier 1s for a reason.
Yep.
Some people have tried to say that our fund is not diversified. It's overweight in the top holdings. It's very purposeful. And we have no problems having massive overinvestments in Trulieve and GTI and Verano and Curaleaf and Cresco for that matter. But no, there's been more separation. I still think that some of those tier 3s, if we want to call them that, have potentially more torque, but you might have to be more careful in your choosing, who's going to survive.
Good point.
I don't think we're going to see too many go completely belly up south, because those licenses and the dispensaries, depending on what state you're in, are often valuable.
Yep.
But yeah, the separation is real. And it does come down to, balance sheets and debt and who's performing the best.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Oh, and markets. I mean, and it's super interesting what Charlie said about Ohio, because and a lot of the companies that we focus on have very good footprints in Ohio. So that's why we think Ohio is such a attractive state.
What a turnout.
We should see some growth in Q3 and Q4.
I think so.
Thanks to Ohio. As long as some other markets aren't seeing some attrition, but we should see some growth from Ohio, judging by the data that we're getting out of there so far.
Yeah, and all I can say is some people say, well, it doesn't matter. We're just focused on federal reform and what's going to happen there. No, it does matter. It's really, really nice to see these fundamentals behind the scenes to back up everything that we're talking about. Is it going to make one of these companies go to the moon? No, absolutely not. We don't have the investment dollars. We don't have the volumes. We don't have the inflows. We're seeing some separation, but it backstops all of the other stuff we're waiting for, which is, 3 in Florida. It's rescheduling. It's everything else.
Let me ask you a question. I think it's the reason why a lot of people are still here.
Mm-hmm.
We saw press releases announced back 7-8 years ago, and stocks were up 25-30% the next day. That day that comes where you start to see these companies uplist, and let's say there's full-on descheduling, and you fast forward 3-5 years from now, institutions start to get in. Do you think those days will happen again in this industry?
Well, they certainly can. And let Trump having a press conference in Mar-a-Lago, and he wasn't even announcing anything. Somebody asked him a question, and he chose to respond to it.
Yeah.
And a week ago, we were here on the show, and I said, hey, Trump just needs to say something about cannabis. And as soon as he said something, look what happened.
Now we're in a great position. You look at both parties that are like supporting and talking positive about the space. So if we don't get truthfully what we want right now, like, yes, we'll get rescheduling, but there needs to be more things after that. But the pathway is being paved.
Look at when the HHS, I think it was either when the HHS document, the unredacted document hit the market, or there was another announcement. MSOS was up 60%.
The recommendation was
in a single day.
August 28th, 2023, about a year ago, is when the HHS basically recommended for cannabis to be descheduled. And then we saw the 3-week run.
Yeah, now we're going to have more days like that. The problem is that we don't have full follow through, much like today. Everything was, we're down a penny, nothing to, I'll take it. It's a regular old day. We're down a penny, but no, we're going to have more of those days. And come on, Trump is going on X with Elon Musk tonight. There could be quite possibly some good discussions in that. And then just a week away, we got the DNC starting. You don't think they're going to talk about cannabis at the DNC?
Yeah.
So
I hope they do, because if they don't, then the narrative is now going to be, well, cannabis is now taking a backseat and she's got all the mainstream issues to worry about. So I'm hoping it does get its 15 minutes of fame at the DNC, whether it's very, very small or whatever. And if Trump comes out tonight in favor of it, I'm assuming it's going to then force their hand to talk about it at the DNC.
I think both those things are going to happen, Anthony, but everybody needs to remember that cannabis, it might be important to all of us, but it's not the top issue. It is not the top issue,
but
even to the Democrats.
We're not asking for top issue. We're just having to be part of the conversation because
I think it's going to be part of the conversation. I think it's going to be part of the conversation tonight. And I think it's going to be part of the conversation at the DNC. And that's
better be careful. Better be careful what we ask for, because if he doesn't, if he comes out in favor of, let's say, if he says something and he comes out in favor of cannabis but not in favor of 3, it's going to be a big problem.
Yeah,
it's possible. It's possible. Everything's possible, and that's why the stocks are trading like they are today. It's a mixed bag.
Gretchen, hello from Washington. Don Murphy's been talking about Trump needing to just mention Florida cannabis forever.
Yes,
Gretchen,
what do you that for a while now?
Gretchen, what do you think about Amendment 3 tonight? Do you think it gets brought up? And if so, what do you think that Trump is going to say about it? He'll say states' rights. I completely agree with that.
That's good.
He can't go back on states' rights. He may listen to Matt Gaetz, but I kind of don't think it's a big deal what Matt Gaetz said. I think it's kind of in one ear and out the other, and he's trying to play both sides. He's trying to satisfy his far right conservative base. At the same time, he has spoken positively about cannabis in the past. So I'm not putting a lot of weight in that.
Yeah, Charlie nailed it. He didn't say he was against cannabis. He said he was against the structural nature of the constitutional amendment. Because of the medical program that he voted in favor for. It's just not as malleable if you pass it the way that they did it versus a constitutional amendment.
And
I think Gretchen's correct that Trump doesn't care about Gates at all.
No. And something that we talked about, Anthony, you and I in particular last week, is we said we've both heard from people that there are smart people in the ear of the Trump camp.
Yes.
And I say smart people about cannabis in particular. So we've both heard that. We know who some of these people are that are talking to the Trump camp and people that Trump listens to. I think he's getting educated up
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Aussie investors, we got some people over the seas. Hopefully any clarification from Trump will be positive. States right, Schedule 3 and safe and all good.
Don't hold your breath on safe.
I know.
Yeah, safe is well. What I'm hoping he doesn't do is downplay Schedule 3 for the Democrats, and then tries to say, "Well, vote me in, and I'll decrim or legalize it federally."
Yeah, I don't see that. No,
he's just a loose cannon. I'm curious to see what he says tonight.
Yeah,
sure.
I'll be watching simply to see what he says about cannabis.
Yeah. In case anybody now doesn't know, Elon Musk is interviewing Donald Trump tonight, 8:00 on X. Okay, my wife told me 45-minute podcast. That's it. We're at the 45-40 mark. I got to go. I'm going to a Stanley Cup party tonight. One of the Florida Panthers has brought the cup down to where I live, and my daughter has been invited along with a few friends. So I got to run. But before I go, one last thing I wanted to bring up. What was your response when the FDA came out late Friday night and announced that they rejected MDMA? What's that mean, I think, for ETFs like yourself and the overall space? Like, it's just, are we concerned about the overall health of this industry? Which is your dog have any comments, Anthony? I know
she does not have any comments. She does not have any comments on the efficacy of MDMA. I can assure you that.
But what's this like? I don't think this has any impact, obviously, on a lot of the companies in the space that are doing research outside of this. But this is you're really starting to see a very select few companies that have raised the proper amount of money, and this is going to take a long time before a lot of this stuff is commercialized.
So we heard a mixed bag from insiders that we know in the psychedelic space. I didn't think that MDMA had a snowball's chance in hell after that ICER meeting, or the hearing at the FDA. If you thought that MDMA was going to get approved after that hearing, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that was a damning show of support for MDMA.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too. However, when last week's bipartisan support that was announced, I thought maybe there's something I'm not aware of. But once the actual decision came out, everything you thought became a reality. And I guess the big thing for me, my biggest takeaway is just how these trials were conducted. It was probably the most important moment for this space. And I can't believe what like you show up to a job.
I don't know enough about it to talk on the matter, but I mean, we saw firsthand at the MAPS conference what
you show up to a job interview with a suit or proper dress on, that type of thing, and I just felt like showed up and it was like what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg, the movie The Social Network, in his robe and slippers. Like, I just cannot believe what had happened. But
as a reminder, it's very early for psychedelic investments. And there's still other things going through.
Look, MyMed's had a great run, Dan. MyMed has a great run, but they've got a lot of great IP, and I know a lot of the people are in place there have dealt with the FDA for decades. I just think that many people were looking for a catalyst moment to wake this industry back up, but it shows that we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But one thing's for sure, my biggest takeaway is that a lot of these companies are conducting trials right now with the way the FDA kind of worded what they need to see. These companies now have a blueprint on how to properly present a lot of these trials to the FDA, which again will take time. But
glass half full.
Yeah. All right. Make sure log on, subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Dan Ahrens, thanks for joining us again here on a Monday. And let's keep in touch. Let's keep this price momentum going. And I know all of you will be on X tonight at 8:00 as former president, the 45th president, Donald Trump, will be joining Elon Musk on X for a Q&A. So that will be interesting to see how that goes. And fingers crossed, there's some positive sentiment towards the cannabis space. In the meantime, you guys enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll check back with you later this week.
Cool.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.